Okay, well, let's continue with the following variation, e6. Previously, d6 was the variation with which we started, but let's see e6. Yeah, this is another move, this is kind of the Pausen setup, which he style setup when he opens the f8 bishop's diagonal instead of the c8 one. Knight f3, after both white continue this development, so come out with the knights first. This is completely normal. Bishop c5. Yeah, at first sight this is a strange move because usually black developed first with the knights, also similarly as white. Or maybe some pawn moves like a6 or something like that. But yeah, knight c6 will be transposed into another variation. So bishop c5 and bishop f4. It's very good to come here because white starts dark square strategy. So d6 square we go towards here. Sometimes knight b5 can be dangerous also. So this is a really understandable move. The bishop is well placed on the h2 b8 diagonal. And a6. How about if queen b6 instead? Queen b6 seems to be an active queen move, however, it's a bad move now, because white can continue with an interesting play, bishop d3, because, you know, this seems to be a double attack, yes, on f2 and b2, and white plays a very cheeky move. Bishop d3 doesn't care about anything. d6, because what is the point if bishop takes f2? Seems to be a good move, but actually nothing, because king f1 and his bishop will be just even in trouble. For example, if the bishop goes back to c5, then always this knight a4 will be the point. The queen goes somewhere, knight takes c5, queen takes, and rook c1, and in the end we win the c8 bishop. And this is hopeless for him completely. Or if the bishop doesn't go back, I also have several threats, like for example knight f6, then also knight a4, and the queen can't hold the diagonal, and that's why the f2 bishop is lost. So bishop takes f2 is not good, and a similar situation coming after queen takes b2. Yeah, it's very funny because first which we think about that is kind of knight move, knight b5 or knight a4, but we have to be careful about this checkmate. So we play the brilliant castle, it's actually double exclamation mark, queen takes c3, capture the knight, but bishop e5, this was white's counterplay, and if the queen goes somewhere, just bishop takes g7 and win the h8 rook. Okay, so queen takes b2 is no problem at all. That's why he played a natural d6. But d6 is always an interesting question, not only in the Morra gambit, in any Sicilians, when the bishop went out to b4 or c5, and then he plays d6, so he closes out his bishop, so his bishop can't go back to e7, because when the pawn is on d6, the bishop's natural square is e7. So now he can't go out with that. But why he plays d6? Why doesn't play another developing move, for example, knight somewhere? Okay, if knight f6, he has to calculate with the e5 also soon, maybe castle first, but later e5 will be a good move. Or knight e7 also doesn't help so much because castle followed by knight a4. So d6. Castle and bishop d7. Generally he would like to control a little bit the a4 square, but still I also have knight a4 as a completely good option. First of all, he played rook b1. Rook b1 is a tricky idea because he wants to play b4 and bishop b4 a3 and win the bishop. So the bishop is kind of trapped after b4. So a5 he needs to stop a little bit. But then knight a4 we just go. And white is better because we will gain the bishop pair. And what can he do? If bishop takes a4, queen takes a4, check, knight d7, b4 also. Bishop takes b4, a3, and we won the bishop. So it's not really possible. If the queen goes somewhere, for example a7, then we also have several ways. Maybe at least we take it. Queen takes, the rook c1, and white is very, very good here. Okay, so queen b6 was a bit early, so before the development is not really good to come and attack the opponent points. So let's see how about knight c6, a natural developing continuation. Bishop c4 and knight ge7. Yeah, both sides are a continued development. Let's see how about, for example, a6 instead. Rook c1, knight ge7. Yeah, rook c1 he played first instead of the castle. I think it's just different move order, but everything is same because now he plays castle, so there is no better move like this. Knight g6 and bishop g3. Castle. And now coming a very important move, e5 exclamation mark, because the point is that white would like to gain some space. So that's why the d7 pawn will be weak, because moreover knight e4 can also come and then go to d6 from there. b5, bishop d3, bishop b7. He also continued development, and h4. Yeah, very ambitious move. How about, for example, knight takes b5, because seems to be a good move, and if he takes back, then rook takes c5 and get back a pawn. Okay, maybe he plays bishop takes f2, take back, a takes b5, bishop takes b5, and rook takes a2, and white couldn't win back the material. Black is maybe okay. So instead of knight takes b5, let's try to find something another. h4 was a great move. Bishop e7. Yes, because as black played a short castle already, he can't stop with h5. Yes, because this pawn will be extremely weak, so I will jump to knight g5 followed by queen takes h5, and white has actually a decisive attack here. So bishop e7 just went back here, h5, knight h4, and bishop b1 just go back, knight takes f3. Bishop b1's idea is also clear. He would like to play queen d3 and also create this bishop and queen battery. Usually this is a good idea to come back with the bishop, especially when the rook came out from a1 to c1, and because the bishop from the back rank is also so strong. Knight takes f3, queen takes, and f5. Yes, he should do something, otherwise queen e4 or h6 or knight e4, these are two unpleasant moves. There is no good knight jump, because queen takes b7 coming, and the bishop is not protected. Jump to a5 is completely nothing. So that's why f5. And let's see how to do that now. E takes f6. Rook takes f6. Yeah, because if bishop takes, then also queen d3. And extremely strong here, no g6. So this was a huge point of the h4, h5. He can't block the diagonal. So it's completely hopeless for him. How about g takes? Also doesn't seem to be so good. Rook fe1, f5. And let's see, also brilliant plays coming now. How should play with white here? Let's see. Knight d5! Exclamation mark. Let's see why this is so good move. E takes d5. So brilliant piece sacrifice. Bishop takes f5. The black king is a bit opened. So we sacrificed a clear knight. Okay, maybe he will get back something pawn, but only for this attack. It's simply excellent. d6. If bishop f6 instead, let's see how to continue now. White immediately finds another weakness, the d6 square, bishop d6, and again start to attack the opponent with this. King h8. Yeah, he has to sacrifice, because let's see, what about if the rook would escape? For example, rook e8. Rook e8 is very, very dangerous because queen takes d5, king h8, and queen f7. So we will have a very quick penetration with the queen and threatening to checkmate here. So not clear what can he do right now. So for example, rook e1, queen g8 is not working. Okay, working because only move, but I take the bishop. So white is simply winning here. So rook e8 is not working. How about rook f7? Queen takes d5. Just take back a pawn, like nothing happened. Just a very normal continuation. And yeah, we have another new threat. So for example, let's see if he plays like bishop g7, go back here. Bishop takes h7. Yeah, this pin is very unpleasant for him. This one. And if king takes f7, king takes h7, queen takes f7. And materially white is also good already. Rook and two pawns for the knight and bishop. And look how weak is the black king. Completely weak. Okay, let's go back. King h8. How about knight e7 instead? Knight e7 is also completely normal way. Queen g4 check. King h8. Yeah, of course he can't block because it's hanging on e7. So king h8. Bishop takes d7. So I wanted to save my f5 bishop. To take this pawn is a good idea because first of all get back a pawn, and also very hard to move for black from these bishops. d4. If bishop c8 instead, as a dubious move, then we can start the penetration with rook c7, and of course if he would exchange, then rook takes, and the next move I take on e7. So this is simply hanging here. Yeah, maybe the rook is even more stronger. So this is hopeless for him. Takes, rook takes, and threatening with checkmate. Here also queen is hanging, so completely hopeless for him. Let's see how about knight g8. Queen f4, double exclamation mark. What a smart continuation. White simply protects his d6 bishop. And for example, if black escapes with the rook, he just play a bishop c6 and everything is protected in this diagonal. However, this rook e8 also seems to be good, but this is not completely clear because bishop d7, rook d8, rook d8. Yeah, the position is approximately equal because a rook and two pieces black has for the queen. So materially black is really okay. Okay, his pieces are not so coordinated, but not clear how can we crush that. So yeah, bishop c6 is completely good and we have several threats here. This is completely winning now because take on c7, bishop takes, queen has to go, and bishop takes a8 and done. How about bishop takes d7? Now just continue with the natural bishop takes f8. However, the another point here, we couldn't take on f8 immediately because the queen can take the c7 rook. So this was the another point of the queen f4. So queen f4, bishop d7, bishop f8, queen takes f8, still, okay, I can't stop here because white is taking the bishop, still, materially, black is not worse. Rook and pawn against the two pieces, but also penetrated the rook to d7, d5 is hanging, h8 king can be some problems after this. And which is the most important, white is much more active than black. Black pieces are passive and not coordinated at all. Okay, let's go back. And let's see how about d4 instead of the bishop c8. After bishop c8 we play this rook c7. So if d4, what is the point of d4? Just an active move, open up the b7 bishop's diagonal, and sometimes after rook g8, the g2 pawn is actually hanging. So there is a nice battery also here with the rook and bishop. And rook takes e7. What a smart continuation, but what is the point of this? Bishop e7 and bishop c7, and suddenly the black queen is trapped. But why don't we play this immediately? That's because immediate bishop c7 could have been met by rook g8. And I don't really have a good square. But if I take on e7 and then here, and if now plays rook g8, I can go with the queen to f5, and I allow him to play rook takes g2, king f1, the king is safe here, queen f8, and bishop e5, white is winning here, because king g8, bishop e6, and suddenly we checkmated him. Yeah, but it's very, very important to compare always, but why not here? Because here I can't go to f5 with the queen. Yes, it's so clear here. So rook g8, queen f5, rook f8. So rook takes g2 was not working. Rook f8, queen e6, rook f6, and after bishop e5, we have again a strong pressure for the material. At this moment we have a rook down for the bishop, for the pawn, but okay, white is very active. He will get back an exchange immediately, even take the d4 also. So for this we can say it's a good compensation again for the sacrificed material. So this was the rook g8, but finally white can face this with a very nice defensive move, the bishop f3, it's a really brilliant one. Suddenly the bishop is coming here and attack the opponent queen, but it's hanging for free. But if g takes f3, he can play rook g8. This was the point. In case of queen takes d4, bishop f6, and he avoided very well, and the next move the queen will go to e7, so it's completely okay for him. So g takes f3, rook g8, bishop takes d8, rook a d8, rook c7, rook g4, f takes g4, finally the pawn structure will be okay, d3, and now after king f1, we can see, okay, now black has a little compensation, but not those type of compensation when he has threats. He can maybe survive the game, but this is usually a comfortable position for us, especially practically, when the opponent has chance to survive. But not sure, but maybe he can survive. Anytime we can equalize the position with rook c8 if we want, and exchange the rooks. But of course still we would like to keep the tension, and maybe in a good moment we can do it. Alright, so this was the knight e7. Let's see how about king h8 instead. Oh, wait a second, so bishop d7, d4. Yeah, rook e7, yeah, this is which we saw now, exactly. Okay, rook e8, we also saw rook f7, king h8, exactly. And let's see how to play right now. Bishop takes the rook, queen takes, and we start to win back kind of material. Maybe bishop takes d7, knight e5, he comes with some counterplay. Queen f5, maybe he takes the bishop, we take back with the queen, and suddenly this is not so easy again rook and pawn against the two bishops. Okay, two bishops are actually pretty strong, but also the king is a bit weak, and the white rooks are very active on the only two open file. It is in the position, but both white rooks are controlling that. So this is a really ideal rook position, rook standing. Alright, let's go back. Let's see how about d6. This was the bishop f6 when the bishop came here. So he tries to cover the d6 square and yeah, just push the pawn. Okay, however, this type of moves are weaken another squares, and coming a brilliant rook takes c6, exchange sacrifice, still not completely understandable what is the point and why he played like that, but the point is that if bishop takes, then bishop e6 check, king h8, queen c3 check, bishop f6, and queen takes c6, and we also have a great compensation, but we'll take even one pawn. e6 bishop is extremely strong, so the e6 bishop is almost like, the e6 bishop's value is almost like for a rook, so it's pretty good, and excellent compensation we have. Okay, let's go back a bit. And how about if the rook would take back on f6 instead of the g takes? Okay, this is a tempo, this is the most logical. He would like to come on the f file. Queen g4, a very natural square of the queen, a very straightforward continuation. Queen e8. He also tries to come towards the king side and try to protect his king a little bit. Knight e4, just go forward with the knight. Rook h6, because what else? Yes, he should keep the h6 square also. Maybe he plays, if he plays kind of rook f5, we can maybe jump to d6 and some counter attack we also have here. Or if rook h6, then the knight is suddenly coming towards the king side with the queen side, knight c5, and it says he has a great initiative because now the bishop is hanging on b7, and if he takes, then the rook is coming, protecting this pawn, and suddenly it's not so easy for it. For example, d5, rook e1. Also black is a pawn up, but it's not enough. Not enough because white is too active. He has bishop pair. The b7 bishop c6 knights are not good at all. b7 bishop is completely passive. c6 knight can't move. Only back, but then there is penetration immediately. This pawn is hanging in immediately. If queen takes h5, then takes, and rook takes e6. So now we exchange the h pawn for the e6, but again we have attack against his pieces. So he can go, for example, rook c8, and yeah, I can do anything. For example, f3. The king can also come. Just a useful move. Only white can play for win. This is the most important because the bishop pair gives always a very good compensation for the material. Alright, let's go back. So this was the a6 variation. Let's see how the knight ge7. So a6 was very, very solid. He wanted to protect the b5 square, so really solid continuation. Knight b5 now. Yeah, white immediately tries to use out that. He didn't play that. And let's see what are the lines which are coming here. Castle. If bishop b4 check instead, so he also tries to make some problems, then king f1. It's very typical when we have an attacking position, we don't really block the check with some piece, for example with the bishop, because then there is no more checks, no more threats on the f4 from f4 the h2 b8 diagonal. 92 also go out from the center, closes the d file for the queen, and black can come with e5, and he closes the important diagonal. So king f1 is much more important move. Okay, we can't castle, but the king is not so weak here, and this is the point. I can continue my threats. The main threat now is bishop c7 is trapping the queen. Castle, bishop c7, queen e8, and a3. Yeah, because here we had also several moves. Knight c7 was also pretty tempting, but some counterplay can come here. For example, knight g6. I think rook b8 is also okay, and at least he repeats. But maybe even knight g6 can also do so. Let's play the bishop c7. I think this is completely okay. Queen e8 and a3. Bishop c5, a little bit chase away the bishop, and then e5. e5 we already saw previously. White would like to gain some space, and the d7 pawn I can't move because en passant always. b6, b4, it was another plan to push it. However, if we would push the b4 immediately, still he can come with the counterplay of d5. Otherwise, if bishop b6, then knight d6 is too dangerous and trap the queen. So d5 he has to play, he needs to play. E takes d5, e takes d5, bishop kind of d3, maybe a6. So complicated position, possible but a bit complicated. So that's why e5, but when he played b6, then already b4. And also a6, so something intermediate move he must play, otherwise he is in trapped. Otherwise the bishop is completely trapped and he has to resign the game. So knight d6, jump here. Yes, because if we would go back with the knight to c3, he can come with b5 also, so we can't win a clear piece. He always have something counterplay. So knight d6 takes, e takes, knight f5, and bishop takes b6. And we can say that white has a promising position. Bishop pair materially equal. There is a strong pawn on d6, so I think practically it's very, very unpleasant for black. I think everybody would choose the white pieces from here.